Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. Welcome back to r/MaliciousCompliance, where people follow exact orders to spite someone. And in today's episode, it's all about nasty Karen bosses demanding workers obey them. And one OB tells a story about the time they obeyed their Karen boss so much, it literally ends her career, guys. The stories are so satisfying in this one, so sit back, grab a drink, relax, and let's dive in. To start, I used to work IT at a mid-sized logistics company. Our warehouse ran 24/7, but the corporate office was open Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. I was responsible for maintaining the internal server that handled everything from payroll to inventory management to shipping labels. That said, one Monday morning, I get this email from a higher-up who we'll call Karen, demanding that we take the server offline immediately for scheduled maintenance. Now, I had scheduled that maintenance for Sunday evening. I sent out 3 notices and got no objections, but Karen didn't read those emails, and she was now insisting we do it right now during her working hours. I replied, hey, so taking the server offline during business hours will halt access to shipping, inventory, time tracking, and payroll processing. Please confirm you'd like me to proceed. She replied, and I quote, yes, don't question me. You should be working on my schedule, so get it done now. It was quite the smug answer, but alright, malicious compliance time. I looped in the warehouse manager, and I let him know the system would be down per Karen's urgent request. I then pull the plug at exactly 10:30 a.m. Within 15 minutes, the entire office was in chaos. No one could clock in or out, print labels, track shipments, or even check inventory levels. The phones were ringing off the hook. The CFO immediately storms into my office screaming, hey, what the heck is going on? I just show him the email thread, and he read it and his eyes went wide. Less than 30 minutes later, Karen storms into my office. She's red-faced and yelling at me. I calmly pointed out that she had approved the server downtime in writing despite my warnings. I offered to restore access early, but reminded her that it would take time to reboot and check for errors from the forced shutdown. Was there a fallout? Oh, yes. Karen gets dragged into a meeting with the COO and the CTO that afternoon. From what I heard, it did not go well for Karen. After that, all urgent IT requests from management had to go through a management process with multiple approvals. I also got a little bonus on my next paycheck for handling the outage with professionalism. Sometimes, the best way to teach someone why we have procedures is to let them break one. Just once. What a beautiful malicious compliance that was, guys, and just knowing how smug and entitled that Karen boss was made the malicious compliance even sweeter. Don't you question me, I'm the boss and you're on my schedule. Like, don't you just love it when someone needs to be in control so much that they don't stop and think about the consequences? And I love that OP knew the outcome even before it happened. Again, glad she got what she deserved. So this happened decades ago, and I recently just thought about it. When I was in university, a friend landed a part-time job doing networking for a really small company and then asked if I wanted in. It was easy money, 12 hours per month, to basically maintain the network infrastructure. Sometimes, I would upgrade firmware on routers, check logs, run virus software, and install some stuff on computers. So I said yes. The company used to fix and sell printers and printer-related stuff. The place was run by 2 ladies that were friends. Let's call them May and June. But the CEO in functions was May's husband. Let's call him CEO Peter. The rest of the company were accountant Peter that also shared the name with the CEO, and some technicians that were never there, and 2 hard-working sales reps. Basically, the accountant, the technicians, and the sales reps were the only ones doing work there. Even though May and June were also technically sales reps, they hardly ever made a call. May spent all day browsing the internet for things to buy, and June spent all day chatting with another guy who wasn't her husband, who also shared the name with the CEO. Let's call him Third Peter. And CEO Peter spent the day watching X-rated videos at work. May appeared to have no problems with CEO Peter's habits, which is odd, right? Meanwhile, I spent most of the time there trying to clean CEO Peter's computer from the myriad of viruses that he would install. From browsing sketchy sites, clicking on sketchy links, and downloading free X-rated videos. Even when I complained a lot about it to him, he said he didn't know why there were so many viruses, and he kept doing it every single day. On top of that, the place was full of drama. One day, May approaches me furious, saying that she caught one of the sales reps browsing the internet instead of doing sales calls, and she wanted to disable the internet for all the reps. I check the logs, and I find out the rep browsed the specifications of one of the machines she was selling. It was a newer model she wasn't familiar with. So with that, cue malicious compliance. I disabled the internet for the whole company. About 2 minutes later, May, June, and CEO Peter come running to the server room. They're shouting what the heck is happening to their internet. The accountant and the sales reps never realized something changed because they were hard at work. I told them that May made me do it. And to that, she responds, "But just to the reps. I don't want the reps to have internet." I just told them some BS that I couldn't block a specific IP because they were assigned dynamically, blah blah blah. CEO Peter was as red as a tomato. He demanded to reinstate the internet for everyone. That's when I look at June and she nodded. I looked at May and she said, "Are you sure you can't just for them?" I said, "No." She exhaled and then said, "Okay, the internet's back up." The company dissolved not long after when June sends an email meant for Third Peter to Accountant Peter while he was looking at a thing with CEO Peter, who then saw the email. That day, the place was a huge crap show. I think we spent like 4 hours in the company just listening to the husband and wife go at it, and the only thing lacking was popcorn. Also, CEO Peter made hilarious attempts to hide his X-rated usage. Once, he had this CD named something like Big Chested Gals, and he told me it was a kid's movie. Yeah, the post ends right there, guys, but oh my goodness, what a circus that was, right? And why am I not surprised? The company ends up getting dissolved in the end, because what a clown show that was. A cheating wife, a husband who wouldn't stop watching adult videos at work, and a woman who always shopped. Like, were they on purpose looking to run that place into the ground? And also, for all who are curious, that joint operation was shut down, and then it was decided that each would start again on their own side. But the thing is, they fought over which workers would come to which company. And in the end, no workers wanted to come, so both companies end up failing miserably in the end. On one summer break during high school, I had this job working the front counter of a computer service store. Now, the computer part is irrelevant, but as a front counter customer service associate, part of my job is essentially acting as a secretary for the bigwigs who have an office at this location. I would be taking phone calls, dealing with walk-ins, all that fun stuff. Now, I have zero issues with this responsibility, but it does tend to bug me when these tasks are clearly personal, not company business. This particular store was located at the end of one of many buildings in a strip mall. So there was a parking lot in front for customers, and then there was an access road running right next to our unit to the employee and delivery lot in the back. It was corporate policy that no employee, even the owner, was to park in the customer lot. Most of us, being reasonable people, parked in one of the well-marked spots in the back lot. This company also had 3 managers who essentially served as CEO, COO, and CFO. The CEO and the CFO were majority owners. Mostly, however, they were just the bosses, and they were really cool people to work for. It was a really casual work environment, and we had a lot of fun without a lot of micromanagement. The CFO was a minor exception. While easygoing and a decent boss, the guy always had a bit of an entitled attitude because he was a primary investor in the business. He thought he knew better and he was more important than anyone. Sometimes, like in financial situations, this was absolutely true, but the attitude carries on over into areas that he was not an expert in, like how to repair computers. But that's also not really important either. What's important is that the CFO had this collection of Corvettes that he absolutely doted on. He took great pride in driving a different one each day and showing it off. Well, at some point, the CFO decides that he's gonna start parking on the access road between the parking lots instead of in the back like the rest of us. Now, I'm not sure why, but I assume it was from some combination of I'm too important to walk that far to my office and no one can see my Corvette back there. And this is annoying, as now we need to drive completely around to the other side of the building to get to the back lot. As employees of the CFO, us underlings do gripe about it, but we take it without complaint. The rest of the businesses in the strip mall, however, do not. One day, this business owner comes into our office and he says, I need to talk to whoever drives that Corvette. I respond, sure, let me see if he's available. Can I ask what this is about? The owner says he needs to move his car. He's blocking back lot access. I tell him, just one moment, let me check. I then proceed to the back of the store where the CFO's office is, and I say, hey, there's an owner out front asking that you move your car. He'd like a word with you. The CFO sighs and says, tell him I'm busy. With that, I head to the front of the store. I tell the owner, I apologize, the CFO's in a meeting at the moment. I can give him your message, however. Is there anything else you'd like me to add? The owner says, no, just get him to move his car. I tell him I can't promise anything, but I will give him this message. Now, this happens almost verbatim every single day for the next 2 weeks, enough that the owner stops asking to see the CFO, and he just asked that I give him the message, and I do, every single day. The CFO's getting frustrated, but at this point, he can't really get mad at the messenger, and he doesn't want to talk to the owner, so the 3 of us just reach an unhappy stalemate. The next Monday, the owner walks in again, but instead of the normal message, he has an ultimatum. The owner says, hey, will you give the CFO another message? I respond, absolutely. The same one? The owner says, no, tell him I talked to the landlord and that's not a designated parking space. If he doesn't move his car within the next hour, I will have it towed as per my lease with the property management. I respond, okay, I'll alert him immediately. Thanks for the heads up. I'm actually surprised at this point that he didn't just have him towed without warning. However, the CEO apparently found his breaking point. Unfortunately, it's the wrong day for his demand. I go to the CFO's office and I tell him, hey, so the owner guy stopped by again and he said to tell you. The CFO interrupts me right there and he says, stop. You come in here every single day with that stupid crap. I don't want to hear it again. If he comes in again, just tell him I'm in a meeting and take the message, but I don't want to hear it. At this, I confirm and say, so you want me to always tell him you're in a meeting and to never give you his messages? The CFO responds, yes, I never want to speak to him. I respond, okay. The owner, being a much nicer person than I, stops by once more before his deadline's up. As instructed, I inform him that the CFO is in a meeting, but I gave him the message. I then give him a look that clearly indicates that I've done everything in my power, and the only way this is gonna end is with him carrying out his threat. The owner nods knowingly and heads back out. Within 15 minutes, I see the tow truck arrive and leave with the CFO's very, very precious Corvette. Another 4 hours pass before it's quitting time. The CFO comes out of his office to head home, and he quickly returns in an agitated state. He comes through the door screaming, "Oh my goodness, my car's gone. Someone stole my car. Did you see anything? Check the cameras." I respond, "Your car, it wasn't stolen, it was towed." He then says, "What? Well, why didn't you tell me?" I respond, "I tried to tell you earlier that the owner's threatening to tow you, but you ignored me and you told me never to give you any of his messages." The CFO, in a panicked state, said, "Well, this is different. You should have told me about this. Why didn't you?" I respond, "I'm sorry, but I don't feel comfortable deciding which one of your requests to ignore and which ones to follow, so I'm gonna follow all of them. You're the boss." I just smiled as I start to pack up my gear. I can hear the CFO on the phone leaving a message for the owner asking which tow company he used. I did happen to notice that he gave the owner the store number as a callback instead of a personal number. Just as I'm about to walk out the door, the general line rings, so I answer it as I'm supposed to. It's the owner, and he says, "Hey, I'm returning a call for the CFO about the name of a tow company." I respond, "Oh, hi, unfortunately, I have to tell you that the CFO's in a meeting at the moment." The owner starts laughing at this point, and he says, "Well, leaving a message doesn't seem to work well, so I guess I'll just wait for him to call me back." I tell him, "No problem, have a nice day." The CFO did learn a lesson in the end, and he never parked in that lane again. The CFO was pissed, but I'm pretty sure the COO had a talk with him about using employees to duck responsibilities, because I never saw any fallout from that event. The owner and I share a knowing smile every time we saw each other after that. Guys, there is nothing more satisfying than a smug boss getting put in their place, and I just love a good parking justice story. I'm also glad the guy realized that just because you own a business doesn't make you any better than others. Like, just follow the rules like everyone else. This one is a long one, so buckle up. I used to work for a company that had a weird work culture. Everyone, including the CEO, directors, and the owner, worked way too much. And some would proudly say that they could only sleep after drinking because they have so much work that they can't ever turn off. I was working 12 hours a day, plus commute, all without overtime, while being paid less than market average for 8 hours. I was dumb, I loved what I did, and the company has a very big name in my country, so it did help build my resume. Also, I had the chance of tackling very interesting projects, so I saw it as a stepping stone to better jobs. About 8 months in though, I start to break. My mental health was taking a big dive, and I would wake up at 4 in the morning thinking about things I wasn't able to finish, and then I couldn't fall back asleep, so I handed my resignation. The CEO, who I had a good work relationship with, then called me in to ask what's going on. He asked what they could do to keep me on the team. I said we needed more people in our department and I had to start working 1 hour later, so I could at least go for a walk every morning. He agreed with both of those things, and he said they're already working on the budget to get 2 more people to our department. That said, my director had vacation planned, and during that couple of weeks, I got to work 1 hour later, and I started to feel better. The interviews happened during that time, and by the end of the 2 weeks, we had 2 new members for our team. And then, on the 3rd week, when my director's back, we're all called into a meeting about 2 big projects that will require every hand on deck. The company was preparing for a huge project, and we had to work on it. Well, the 2nd day of the week, the director calls me in for a chat, and she says I can't be getting in late. I said I wasn't late, my hours were changed to start later as I had a talk with the CEO. She then says that I can't start at a different time than everyone else, and that everything was way too busy for it anyways, that I either accept it or I quit. She felt that she could spare me now that we had 2 new members. So I called a bluff. I thought, not worth it. I gave my notice and I quit, and she was surprised. I get to work the next day, and I find out that one of the new hires had also quit, stating way too much work for her. I just keep working as usual, as I don't want to damage my professional image. They find someone to replace me that week, since they still had resumes from the previous cycle, and that's when the second hired person quits. And then my replacement quit. The second replacement shows up, and I wasn't allowed to train him, just in case the first one quit because of something bad I said. But he broke a record, and he gave up after the first day, all before the end of my final week of notice. That week, I had gone through a great interview for another company, and I believe they called my company for reference. HR must have told my director, since she suddenly starts acting very friendly to me, and she would stop my coworkers whenever they made remarks about me leaving. My last day there, the director calls me, and she says maybe we were both too harsh in our decisions. She said that she's willing to allow me to get to work 30 minutes later if I cut my lunch hour by 30 minutes. And she's fine ignoring my quitting, since it was clearly a decision made by impulse. She then asked me to unquit. I said I would consider staying if she matched my offer from the other company plus 10%. On top of that, I would stay if we went back to the previously agreed starting work time. I told her I would need to have everything in writing before the end of the day, since I wouldn't want to screw the other company over. At that, she said I was doing her dirty, something hurting the company, no loyalty, think of your future, everything we've done for you, blah blah blah. You aren't even being professional. Why would you even consider quitting? When she said that last bit, I just smiled and I said it was her idea for me to quit. That we had a deal that I was willing to uphold despite everything bad that working there had. I told her that she said the deal was off, and if I didn't like it, I should quit, so I complied. I didn't like it, so I quit. I find out we had a third replacement for me, and I also find out that she lasted 2 weeks. 2 months later, the whole team is different, except the director, who is there holding strong. The CEO did say that he was sad to see me leave, but he understood it. HR also confirmed to me at my exit interview that he had been talking to the owner and directors on how to change the work culture in order to retain talents better. My HR friend later told me that the owner stopped that nonsense. Yeah, with a company like that, it's no surprise that even the most talented people don't want to stay for the long run. Cheap pay, insane workloads, long hours, disrespect from bosses. Yeah, that sounds like a great place to work at. And it does suck, hearing that the owners aren't willing to change the culture. But you know what happens in places like that, right? Like, they'll just keep on exploiting people on a day-to-day basis and just keep chugging along while the owners sip on fine wine and enjoy their rich lifestyle. So here's some context. This happened a few years ago when I was 18 years old and working as a receptionist for a community nursing service. As the youngest person on the team by a long shot, as the average age of employees was around 55 to 60, I was usually the one responsible for computer stuff. It was mostly just simple things, nothing a quick Google couldn't solve. The other staff members were wonderful, and I did learn a lot working with them. Except for the assistant manager, Karen. Now, this woman was the bane of my existence. She was 75 years old, and she recently came out of a 15-year retirement, and she was armed with a certificate in business management from this online course. The woman refused to use basic computer skills, such as Word or email, stating that she didn't need to learn them because she had others to do it for her, namely me. In a 5-hour shift, I would spend 3 hours just fielding her tasks. Needless to say, this came along with all the fun personality traits that make a manager from hell. And here's the malicious compliance. At the start of one of my shifts, I receive an email from Karen asking me to print the attached files. One was a PDF and the other was an MP4 file, a video file. So assuming that she meant just the PDF, I take the printed copy to her. and this is roughly how the exchange went. I bring the copy to Karen, and she says, "Why do you only have one file? I sent two." I respond, you want me to print an MP4 file? Karen says, "Isn't that what I asked?" Me, at this point, said, "Look, I don't think you understand." She then stops me and says, "I do understand. Don't forget that I did your job for well over 20 years, and now I could have you fired." Already over it and ready for some malicious compliance, I just say, "Okay, well, I've never printed this type of file before, so it might take a while." She then interrupts and says, "I don't care how long it takes. You've been given a task and I've told you to do it. Once it's done, you can then move on to other jobs." Hearing that come out of Karen's mouth, I'm grinning ear to ear at this point. I get back to my desk and I send her an email summarizing our conversation and explicitly clarifying that she wanted me to print an MP4 file, to which I get a snarky reply, which I thought, perfect. So with that, I spend the next 4 to 5 hours pausing the video every 2 to 3 frames, screenshotting it, pasting it to a Word document, and hitting print. The administrative tasks did pile up. Not that Karen noticed, because she mostly spent her time reading magazines and talking on the phone. I did feel bad, as this placed an extra load on the other receptionist. However, Karen was universally hated, and they gave me their blessings. Once that was complete, I took about 100 pages, carefully held with clips to her desk, and I sweetly told her that I printed the other file. The woman looked smug until she saw what was in front of her. What was in front of her was page after page of almost the same picture. As the man moves through the video, some slightly blurry, all in full color. She was furious to say the least, but I was 1 hour overtime on my shift, and Karen knew that would already cause her some issues, so she let me leave. And I knew that it wasn't over yet. As expected, I get called into an HR meeting the following week, where they accused me of wasting company time and not complying with management. I then explained the situation in detail and showed them the email, including Karen's awful reply. I also showed them a few more texts and emails where Karen used some particularly descriptive words to insult staff members, including the very HR rep taking my interview. Turns out, this was the straw that broke the camel's back, as Karen had multiple reports against her from other staff members, and she had been driving HR insane with her own complaints. Karen lost her job the following week, and she never did seek employment again after that. The best part is this happened all on a Sunday where I got double pay. I took some of that sweet overtime cash and I brought in cupcakes to work once Karen was gone. I just said it was an end-of-week treat, but we all knew what we were celebrating. The HR rep seemed to particularly enjoy hers. Guys, I love this so much. A Karen coming out of retirement only to get fired and put back into retirement. Like, absolutely wild though. You want this video printed, I'll print that video. Like, that is 4 hours well spent, in my opinion. But yeah, seems like Karen did lack the knowledge to be in that position, so good riddance is what I say. Like, if not OP, it would have been someone else for sure. And that, my friends, brings us to another end of r/malicious compliance. Guys, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. If you did, hit that thumbs up. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so you don't miss these crazy stories. And if you missed the last episode on the channel, it's an r/entitledpeople episode, where this one psycho dude thinks he rules the airport. It's such a wild story, so go check it out if you haven't, and myself and Stevie Boy will see you guys in the next one. We love you.